Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a pretty thought-provoking idea from a source text, this concept of a father acting as a priest for his own family. I mean, what does that actually mean? What would that even look like in practice? Well, let's dive in and find out.
Wow, the source material does not pull any punches. It opens with this incredibly powerful and frankly heartbreaking statement from a young man. The author uses this to immediately frame a central question. What happens when a father, who's supposed to be a reflection of God, ends up becoming a roadblock to faith instead?
So, what's really at the root of a disconnect like that? According to the text, it's not just about being a bad dad in the usual sense. No, it's about something much deeper. Fathers who, as the author puts it, have misrepresented God to the very people they're meant to lead.
Okay, so let's really unpack the core argument of the text. It's built on a very specific and, I think for some, a pretty controversial theological take on what a father's role in the family is all about.
So here's the big idea. The text argues that a father's most fundamental duty is to represent God the Father to his family. And it's really clear on this point. This isn't some optional extra. It's an inherent responsibility. The only choice a dad has is whether he's going to do it well or do it poorly.
And this slide really helps visualize the theological structure the author is laying out. It's based on a passage in 1 Corinthians, and it shows this clear descending chain of authority that is absolutely foundational to the entire argument we're about to explore.
Okay, this table really helps clarify that dual relationship at the heart of the framework. You see, just as Christ relates up to God and down to humanity, the author argues that a man relates up to Christ and then down to his family, acting as their spiritual representative. But, this representative role isn't just a title or a position you hold. The author argues it's expressed through one central, really defining action. And that one action is sacrifice. The author singles this out as the single most important word connected to the biblical idea of priesthood. It's not just a suggestion, it's presented as a father's sacred duty to his family. So you're probably asking, okay, sacrifice, what does that actually look like day to day? Well, the author gives us 4 very specific applications, and these are going to be our roadmap for the rest of this explainer.
All right, let's jump into those first 2 applications of this priestly sacrifice and see how the author uses scripture and stories to really bring them to life. So, first up is Thanksgiving, and it's rooted right here in this verse from Hebrews. The text presents this sacrifice of praise, not just as, a nice thing to do, but as the primary ministry of a priest in the New Testament. And to make this super practical, the author reframes a common idea. It's not just about have you hugged your kid today, it's about have you actively thanked God for them today. This act of gratitude, the author argues, is a powerful, priestly act that creates a spiritual environment where a family can really flourish.
The second application is intercession, but the source defines this as something more specific than just saying a general prayer. It's the act of claiming the benefits of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross specifically for your children. The Old Testament story of Job is used here as a brilliant illustration of this idea. He's held up as a model priest for his family, offering sacrifices for his kids just in case they had sinned, essentially standing in the gap for them before God.
Okay, now for the final 2 responsibilities, and the text presents these as absolutely foundational for a family's spiritual health and well-being. The third point is huge, making the way for salvation. And to explain it, the author turns to one of the most powerful stories in the entire Old Testament, the Passover.
So the source breaks down the specific steps of the Passover from the book of Exodus, and it emphasizes a really crucial detail. Each one of these life or death actions, selecting the lamb, slaying it, and applying the blood, was the explicit responsibility of the father of the household. And that brings us to the final application, which is maybe the most personal of all, a father's active faith. The source presents this not as a private matter, but as a non-negotiable duty that he performs on behalf of his children. This is illustrated with the really powerful story of a father who brings his son to Jesus. And the author highlights a key detail here. Jesus held the father directly responsible to believe for his son's healing. It really underscores this idea of parental responsibility in matters of faith. So, let's just take a moment to recap the 4 duties that, according to the author, really make up this priestly role for a father. So there they are again, offering thanksgiving, making intercession, making a way for salvation, and exercising faith.
According to our source text, these are the 4 key responsibilities through which a father fulfills his priestly role of sacrifice for his family. So, as you can see, this framework lays out a very specific set of duties and a spiritual hierarchy within the family. It's a challenging idea, and for some, it's definitely a controversial one. And it leaves us with this final, thought-provoking question. In today's world, what are the implications of looking at fatherhood through this ancient priestly lens?